following program offers general
All
advice.
right, everybody.
It does not create an
We're going
attorney-client
live.
relationship. Every person's legal situation is unique. You should contact your attorney before taking any legal action related to the subjects discussed in this program. Welcome to Aging Insight, the only show dedicated to your elder care concerns and your resource for learning about how to manage your health, housing, financial, and legal needs. This is a live call-in
Look,
program
we already have
featuring
viewers.
John Ross and Lisa Shoalmire,
Hello, viewers.
elder law attorneys and senior advocates for the Art Latex. Aging Insight is dedicated to helping you navigate the challenges and blessing of growing older. So call in and ask your questions. The number is 903-793-1071.
All right, everybody.
Now here are your hosts, John
Here we go.
Ross and Lisa.
Welcome to Aging Insight, everybody. This is your host, John Ross, here live in the studio with Lisa Shoalmire. You know, we're here live. It is, it's Easter weekend.
Yes, it is.
And yet, here we are in the studio because, you know what? We believe in this information.
And we're here.
And we're here. That's right. So we are here. We're live in the studio. Of course, it's a live call-in show. So if you've got a question or comment, you feel free to give us a call. The phone number is 903-793-1071. That's 903-793-1071. And we're going to have some good stuff to talk about today. And we hope you're enjoying your weekend. It's beautiful out there. It should be a nice day.
Well, you know, I noticed yesterday, John, that, it was Good Friday.
Yes.
Yesterday. And as I was leaving the office yesterday, about 4:30, I was headed over to a client's house to get some papers signed. And I noticed that in our little office area, we were the only people working.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I didn't actually, but that doesn't surprise me.
Don't tell our staff,
Right.
we
Well, I know I did have to call. I tried to return a few phone calls to a few folks in other industries like financial services and things, and I got a lot of voicemails yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and what happened, I think, was that so many people had off of work, and so I mean they wanted to make appointments when they were off of work because when you're trying to care for an aging parent or you're going to be in town for a holiday and you need to get some business done. You just got to get it done. And so we were open so we could visit with those folks and make sure that they could get some guidance and direction. So
that's right.
But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is the job of an elder law attorney, it really never stops because people are going to have health crisis, they're going to have financial crisis, they're going to have legal crisis, and all of these things are going to happen at once. And there's really, you don't get to pick when they happen. This is kind of like when water heaters break.
Right.
You don't really have any choice on when that water heater is going to break, and you can be relatively sure that if it is going to break and it's going to spill water all over the place, it's going to do it at the most inopportune time.
A weekend.
Weekend at night. That sort of stuff. And so, we end up trying to be available quite a bit for those sort of situations, and of course that's because really Lisa and I we do believe in this information. It's why we work on Good Friday and
here on Holy Saturday.
And here on Holy Saturday. That's exactly right.
Well, want to give a special thanks to our sponsors that make sure that we have these lovely facilities and the equipment that's needed so that you can hear us out there on the radio. So we want to say a special thanks to Edgewood Manor and the Barnett Agency, Dirksen Memorial Hospice, Riverview Behavioral and Cowhorn Creek Estates, also to Kurt Green and Company in St. Michael's Hospital, also Red River Federal Credit Union, Twin City Rehab, and Inspirations Health and Rehabilitation out in New Boston, Texas.
Yeah, that's right. And so thanks to all of them. Like I said, they make the radio show possible. And of course, we also are broadcasting this live on Facebook. So you can go to the Ross and Shoalmire page on Facebook, ROSSANDSHOALMIRE, Ross and Shoalmire. You can go to the Facebook page and click on the link there, and you can see us make radio happen.
Well,
if you're so inclined. But if you do, be sure and give us a like on there. Feel free to share the post so that your friends and other folks will be able to enjoy it as well.
Well, John, I always like to kind of, some of our listeners, I don't know, it's kind of like, where's John, where's Lisa for the week?
That's right.
And this past week, I had the privilege of speaking to the Lions Club out in Mineola, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And
the Metroplex.
Yes, the Metroplex of Mineola. For those folks who may not know exactly where Mineola is, it's kind of near the Tyler, Big Sandy area. And what was great, though, is while I was there visiting with the Lions Club in Mineola, I got to meet Mr. Dodd, who is a World War II veteran. And he is still serving his community because he was there, part of the Lions Club meeting, and I think they were having sign-ups for some charity table they were doing shortly, and Mr. Dodd was signed up. So, it's great to see folks that just continue to use the resources that they have and the time on their hands to give back to their community. So it was a great time.
Pretty awesome stuff. Yeah, I was out several different places running around this week. It's just but of course it's just a busy week. But we do a lot of speaking, a lot of these presentations and speaking and things like that. And I know Lisa said somebody with our eggs and issues that we do every month here in Texarkana.
Right, the fourth Thursday of every month, eggs and issues.
The one we do over at Trinity Church. Somebody said, well, it depends on whether John or Lisa is speaking, because if you want to hear some stories, come listen to John, and if you want to get some
nuts and bolts,
come. Basically, if you want to learn, come listen to Lisa. if you want to be entertained, come listen to John.
Well,
and I think we both mix it up but the thing is we've got lots of stories in all of this, and we can usually relate some relatively complicated issues with some stories out there, and some of those stories come from our own practice.
Yeah, I would say most of them do.
The vast majority of them come from our own experiences or the experiences that we've had as clients. But sometimes, and even here on the radio show, sometimes we like to tell stories that we have seen out there in the community or that we've read about. But there's all kinds of stories out there, and I know when I do a speech, or we both do speeches, one particular that we call the 5 big mistakes.
The 5 big mistakes that we see seniors make when it comes to legal issues.
That's right. And with this, there's a few, like for example, paying too much focus on the will, as opposed to not concentrating on things like powers of attorney and stuff like that. Relying on Medicare to pay for long-term care expenses because
it doesn't.
It doesn't. Giving assets away and thinking that that's going to protect them, that's mistake number 3. Number 4 is getting bad advice, relying on the wrong people out there who unfortunately don't know what they're talking about but still like to run their mouths as if they do. But the 5th one, the 5th mistake.
I hear you're revving up, right?
Yeah, I'm revving up. So the 5th mistake is the mistake of doing absolutely nothing. And this is the one that most people do. And we're all guilty of it.
Oh, absolutely. John, when I do visit with folks, and they've come into the office, and they've come in, they've said, they want a will, they need to get some guidance, whatever it is that they're needing. I always ask them, what has motivated them to finally, come in and address this. Because, John, what I found is folks they're always willing to plan their next vacation.
Sure.
To do the research, to figure out, where it is they want to go, and make sure they get everything in the time that they're going to be there. And they will spend months and months and weeks, and if you're planning a Disney vacation, you could spend 2 years planning for that big vacation. So, folks are always willing to plan for the fun things, the happy things, the celebration things of life. So when I have someone in my office, and I ask them what finally brought them in to maybe plan and seek some guidance in the estate planning or elder law area, John, most of the time it's because of an event in their life. Mm-hmm. It's not just that they thought, well, we were kicking it around and we finally realized we needed to do some planning. That's not how it goes. Because, John, when people come in to deal with elder law and estate planning issues, they are really facing their own mortality.
Absolutely.
They are facing the idea that there could be incapacity in their future. And most of us, well, all of us would rather avoid that topic, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
No, it's not fun to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about that stuff. Sure.
Right. So planning. There is a facet that you are in fact dealing with the issue that you won't be here forever.
That's right. And so when we get to this part of it, or in our speech, and we're talking about what people just failing to plan, when we see this, essentially our whole practice you can break down into two halves. The people who are, like Lisa was saying, they're coming in to plan ahead. That's about half the people.
Sure.
But then the other half are those that didn't. And in one way, shape, or form, that failure to plan has caused a problem. And when we speak on this, we like to tell a particular story, but this is not a story that you and I have experienced personally.
No, it's definitely not a story that you and I have experienced, and our listeners and our viewers will figure that out real quick.
That's right. And so actually, what it is, it's a story from the Bible, an Old Testament story. Because this concept of delaying your planning is not new.
No.
And nothing points out how not new this concept is than by showing that people have been delaying making those necessary preparations all the way back
to Genesis.
To Genesis.
Right.
That's exactly right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about this story. We're going to talk about a couple of other situations, kind of in the sense that it is Easter weekend. And so, what does the Bible say about estate planning, elder law? Are there some tools and some tips that we can glean out there? Some lessons to be learned.
Some wisdom.
Some wisdom to be gained. That's exactly right. So we're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Call 903-793-1071 to ask your question.
All right. Well, for those of y'all who are still out there live, it's kind of weird. Everybody else thinks we're on the break, but you're not on the break here. You're still going.
Yeah, the radio folks are getting commercials. So, but John, I didn't really. The story we're going to talk about, I never really thought about it from an estate planning standpoint, and then just one day it just hit me that of course.
Well, yeah, of course it's an estate. Yeah, of course it's an estate planning concept. And you can actually see several things, and we'll talk about a few of them. But there's lots of stuff about doing the right things, and so often. Whether you're talking about taking care of yourself, taking care of the people around you, that wisdom to be gained can be, it does apply. It's kind of odd that you wouldn't think about it. What does estate planning have to do with anything? But it really does. So, let's see. We've got about 2 minutes worth of commercials. You know what we need? We need a Facebook Live sponsor.
Oh, so that our Facebook Live viewers can...
Yeah, they could click on somebody, and that would be a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
If anybody out there, if you're watching the Facebook Live at some point, you say, "Hey, I like that. I'd like to be the sponsor." Well, we could probably make that happen. Yeah, that's the other thing is you don't have much time to take a break and take a drink of water when you're live on the radio. So, got to rest that up during the break. Let's see, we've got think about 30 seconds to a minute left, and then we'll be back live. And we got a comment, a Happy Easter comment on there.
Well, I was a little jealous. I didn't really think about it being Good Friday, so we just kept our schedule the way we always do, and seeing all those folks not working and enjoying the day off, I might plan.
Well, we may still be seeing some of that on Monday too, because I think a lot of people have Monday off also. I mean, don't think schools are closed, and I don't know if schools are closed. Banks are probably closed. Banks are always closed, though.
Well, Monday is I know it's a holiday in Washington, D.C. because of the tax deadline.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, speaking of which, tax deadlines, you have all the way till Tuesday to file, even though tomorrow is the 15th. So, all right, we're going back live here.
Welcome back, everyone, to Aging Insight. This is Lisa Shoalmire, and I'm here in the studio with John Ross. And, we're enjoying a beautiful, picture-perfect Easter weekend if you're listening to us live today. And that has really, John and I were talking about it before we went on the air. And, Easter is, it's such a religious holiday, as, Christmas a little more commercialized these days.
It has gotten a bit commercialized.
But for the most part, and so it made us think about some of the stories and that you can actually find in the Bible that talk about estate planning issues. Who knew?
Yeah, in our practice, we see people get into a stage of their life that we call frail, vulnerable, but not incompetent. So you've reached, you're because of your age, your health, that you've become sort of weak and unable to kind of tend to many of your needs. You may mentally still be know what's going on. You may be able to express your own desires and things like that. But because of the slowing down of everything, it does create this vulnerable position.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain insecurity, I think, that comes with that. But when your physical health fails you, and you do have to rely on others, and I think there's just some anxiety and insecurity that can come with that. And that can lead to some poor judgments and decision making.
Yeah, and you can easily be tricked. This is the same period of time where we see people, when you hear about somebody giving all their money to a Nigerian scam artist, you say, oh, well, how could anybody fall for that? And yet people fall for it every day. And many times it's because of this position in life. And we have an example of this. This position in life that goes all the way back, because inheritance is not a new concept.
Nope, it's been going on since the beginning of mankind, I would say.
Yeah, I would say, and you go all the way back to we usually tell the story of Isaac, and of course at the time, the Jewish tradition at the time was essentially you didn't have a lot of possessions necessarily.
Right. I mean, you may have land or where you were, or that you were farming or grazing your herds of goats or cattle or whatnot on, and you may have some tools and such. But these things were acquired by pretty hard scrabble. I mean,
Absolutely.
So under the Jewish tradition, and John, you may correct me if I don't get this quite right, but this is where the idea that the oldest child.
Yes, the oldest male child.
The oldest male child would receive a double portion of inheritance.
That's right.
From the father. And that was a way to keep some wealth concentrated in the family. And not only did this oldest male child receive a double portion of inheritance from the father, they also became the patriarch of the family upon the death of their father. So they became the boss of the family clan.
Yeah, and they didn't call it an inheritance. They referred to this as the blessing.
Yes.
And so Isaac would bestow the blessing on the oldest child. Now, of course, that was the Jewish law. But as anytime you have laws, but then you also have families.
Right.
And family dynamics is a whole nother ballgame. And I bet almost everybody that's out there listening in some way can relate to the idea that, Isaac, he's married, he's got Rebecca there. and then they've got their two kids.
That's right. They have their two children, Jacob and Esau.
And Jacob, he's the man's man. I'm sorry, Esau. He's the man's man. He's the older one. He's the tough guy. He's the hunter.
Yeah.
Big kid too.
Yeah. No.
Big manly thing.
Yeah. I just imagine Isaac and Esau going to hockey games together. if they not in the desert, of course, but I mean
probably not in the desert.
But I mean, they were bonded. They were father son. Isaac really just respected Esau's manliness and taming the wild and all that.
That's right. And he's a hairy kid too, apparently. I always kind of joke like maybe like like the 70s Burt Reynolds, the man's man right there.
Well, and the other thing I don't know is the legend is that Esau was a redhead.
Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, well, I guess that's the first I'd heard of that. See, you learn something new every day.
And so that whole fiery person,
Yeah, I got some of that heritage right there.
Right. So.
And then of course we've got the other kid.
Yes,
we got Jacob.
We have Jacob, and now, folks, we've had plenty of folks in our office come and tell us about their sisters and brothers, and they will say, "Well, my brother is really Mama's favorite," and even though Mama would never say that he was the favorite.
I know the child of a mama who would say that same thing.
Hush. but the Bible makes clear that Jacob was his mother's favorite child.
That's right.
And there's no question that Isaac loved Jacob and Esau. There's no discussion that that's not the case. But sometimes you just click with a parent. And here, Esau clicked with Isaac, and Jacob clicked with his mother.
That's right, and everything's rocking along. Again, everybody knows what the deal is.
Yeah.
There's no question about. I mean, this is the Jewish tradition. Everybody knows what the deal is. Your older, your patriarch, in this case Isaac, he's going to bestow at some point his blessing on his oldest child. But now he doesn't have to. It's his to bestow.
Right. So
it
was definitely the tradition.
That's the tradition, and I don't think there's any question that that's what he was intending to do.
No question that was what he was intending to do. So, well, why don't we take a break, John, and we'll come back.
We're gonna have to take a break before we get into the real meat and bones of it here. We're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to get in because that's the thing about live radio. We got to take that break right at the bottom of the hour, and we've only got about a minute left before we can get to that. But Lisa, in our practice, have you ever seen where maybe some family members schemed against some other family members?
Yeah, particularly when the patriarch, senior of the family, was not at their highest and their best.
Yeah, or when death is imminent.
I've seen, or I haven't, I have cleaned up the mess where people have put deeds and life insurance policy beneficiaries at the hospital bedside.
Yep. So we do run into this. We actually hear these conversations almost every day, and so. What we're going to do is when we come back from the news break, we're going to talk about what exactly happened in this particular situation and maybe what it is that you can learn from it. And we have a little time after that. We're going to talk about a few other places in the Bible that get into some estate planning and some elder law issues. So stick around. We'll be right back.
KTFS, home of the Savage Nation. Michael Savage, weeknight.
All right, so...
Yeah, I know our timer got me a little off there.
Yeah, we took a break a little bit early on the first one, so that threw us off. But we're all good now that we're at the bottom of the air. We'll let the news do its thing while we sit here and visit with our people on Facebook Live. And hopefully y'all enjoy this on Facebook Live. It's a little weird for us to get on here and stare at the camera as opposed to just staring at these microphones. We've been doing this program for almost 4 years.
It'll be 4 years this August.
Yeah, so 2.5 at this point, a little more. And, all of that has been private. We've been here hiding behind microphones.
Yes, in the studio, in the downtown Texarkana studio.
So technology has caught up with us, though, and now we get to do it live and fill in the commercial breaks with some additional stories and stuff. I don't know. It's funny because I've told this particular story at speeches. It got to be a few hundred times at least. I mean, maybe several hundred. But you can always look out into the audience and you can see who knows the story.
Well, I would think around these parts, that would be quite... Well, most of the audience, I think, would know the story. I think that most of them probably haven't ever thought about it
in this context.
In the terms that we're talking about it,
That's right.
So.
But yeah, but you can. It's funny. You can always see the ones who have heard the story. But then there's always some folks in the audience that I think it's all new to them. You can always there's a few out there this is a new story to them, and of course it's a big world out there. And
I was about to say those folks were not at Miss Anderson's class in Vacation Bible School in the 4th grade, or they would know this story.
That's probably right.
But yeah, I had certainly not thought about Jacob and Esau and Isaac in the sense of, Isaac, I know we'll get into it after the break about how aged and how decrepit, Isaac really was. And, he's making these big sweeping decisions, and it, didn't go as he intended.
Yeah, that's unfortunately that's something that we also see pretty regularly.
Yeah, no, in fact, John, I'm dealing with an estate right now where there's no doubt that the lady who's deceased had a very close relationship with a special nephew, but she didn't make any plans, and she was well into her 80s, and so when she passed away, I think the family, most of the family realizes this special relationship, but some other family members who stand to gain certainly have pushed in, and it's a mess.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, you've got to take care of your business, but particularly before it's too late. It's so funny though. I don't know, Lisa. We got about 30 seconds before we're back on, but I always get people that'll ask me. They'll come in. They've put off for 70 years. They've put off doing any estate planning, and we come up with a plan in the office, and then they say, "Well, what if something happens before I come back to sign?" You hadn't worried about it for 70 years, and now you're worried about something happening in the next 10 days. Yeah. All right, we're going back live.
Question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
Well, welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. This is John Ross here in the studio with Lisa Shoalmire. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, you can give us a call at 903-793-1071. That's 903-793-1071. And before the break, Lisa and I were talking about the story of Isaac. And how he, his plan ultimately was to leave everything or bestow his blessing, which essentially was a double share to his favorite boy, his big, hairy, manly kid, Esau. That's what he was going to do. But he made zero preparations.
Right. No. So basically, Isaac has reached a point to where, I just imagine him essentially being housebound at this point.
Right. He's blind.
So he's blind. He has a lot of trouble getting around. He can't hear very well. Our bodies do fail us. We use them for the decades and decades, but at some point those senses begin to fail us. And Isaac at least recognized that that's where he was, and he knew that he wasn't going to be around a whole lot longer. So it was time to make to bestow that blessing.
Yeah, he's basically decided. You know what? The end is knocking at the door here.
So he's calling for Esau to to make him a meal. He's going to make a ceremony out of this, right?
That's right. And hey, when you have a ceremony, what do you got to have? You got to have some food.
Well, I know every church I've ever been to certainly believes that. We all need some. The dessert table is piled high.
That's exactly right. But unlike a banana pudding, Isaac, he wanted Esau to go out and hunt him some game, his favorite game. And of course, being a manly man and a hunter man, he says, Dad, I'm out of here. And so he heads out.
Yeah. So and I just think that, so he heads out, and here's a situation where we have his spouse, we have Isaac's spouse, kind of think, well, I want my son, my favorite son.
Yeah, she knows what's about to happen.
Yes, so
she knows what's coming.
I want my favorite son to receive that blessing. So she comes up with a plan. She hatches a plan. I think that's kind of interesting that, in the big picture of things, it wasn't Jacob's plan.
Right.
It was his mama's plan. And we certainly can see that around in our time as well. So she comes up with this plan, and she, they make the stew that Isaac loves. And, John, I can just imagine this fragrant Middle Eastern spicy, stew.
Sure.
And, because, as you get older, your smell isn't quite as good, your taste buds don't taste as good, but, you just savor that meal. And so, they strap on some goat pelts.
Well, of course, Rebecca grabs Jacob and says, look, you're going to need to go in there and pretend like you're Esau. And Jacob, he's a smart kid. And he looks at her and he's like, Mom, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. There's no way whatsoever that Dad is going to believe that my little skinny self is that big hairy boy Esau.
My brother, that's right.
Brother. It's not going to happen. And she says, no, I got this. She obviously had been thinking through this one.
Yes.
And so, she's wrapped him up in some animal furs. And says, you go in there wrapped up in these animal furs, and here we get Isaac, and like so many of the clients that we have dealt with, frail, vulnerable, but he's not incompetent.
No, he's not.
He's not incompetent, but he's so frail and vulnerable that at this point in his life, really all he could do was reach out and touch. And when he reaches out and touches and he feels that animal fur, and he thinks he's talking to his big hairy boy, Esau, and he ultimately he gives his blessing to the wrong person.
Right. So like you say, he wasn't incompetent, but because of his frailness, he was easily misled.
That's right.
And that is something we see so often, is someone being easily misled. And that's what happened here. And the blessing was bestowed on Jacob. And, Esau returns from the hunt. And this blessing now has already been bestowed.
That's right.
And John, I can't say that I understand exactly how this Jewish tradition worked. I can't understand necessarily why, he couldn't have taken the blessing back and said, wait a minute, I made a mistake. But something about the tradition, about the legal aspects of making that blessing, it was done.
That's right. But, you can see this in, there about 2 years ago, we talked about a situation where, a daughter had talked to her dad and told her dad, look, you're going to need somebody to care for you, and I'm willing to do it. You just need to deed your house over to me. And that way I'll have the house, and I can, and that'll essentially be my payment. But you go ahead and deed that thing over to me now. And in this case, the dad was vulnerable, he was needy, he was weak, he was worried, he was concerned, and so he trusted this girl. He deeded the house. So he made a competent decision to deed her this home. But ultimately things soured, the relationship soured, and it soured so bad that it got to the point where the daughter actually evicted him from his own house.
Right.
And so, we're not with the story of Isaac here. Again, he's competent to make decisions, and I can't tell you how many competent decisions I have seen that ended in a deed, a will, a power of attorney, in some way, shape, or form, and yet the circumstances surrounding that execution were at best suspect.
Right, just like this one.
Just like this one.
Well, all right, John, it looks like we have a caller calling in. So, caller? Well, that's true. Well, that is true. And
absolutely.
I have always said that. I said, that was a situation that God obviously turned into furthering of His, cosmic plan. So in that sense, it was not the wrong, it wasn't the wrong blessing. But from a human standpoint, it certainly wasn't Isaac's intention. So it's one of those things that God turned that situation into, still furthering his plan. But from a human standpoint, we all understand that was not what was meant.
Yeah, no. So maybe not the. He picked the one that he didn't intend that, but the outcome in that particular case.
Who knows what Esau would have done with it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Maybe Rachel knew something that we all don't know.
And here's a listener who's clearly heard this story before.
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely. So. Thanks for calling. That's a good. That is a good point. Yeah. But so there's actually you can see several places throughout the Bible that kind of interact with some of the elder law stuff, but that one really is one of my favorite because that's one of those just great stories that with the animal fur and the whole deal, it's just a fantastic story, and it really does illustrate the point that ultimately, if there's something that you want to happen and you feel very strongly about it, you've got to make preparations to make that happen before you get to a point where you can be tricked and manipulated.
Right. I always tell folks, you should do your planning when you're at your highest and best, if possible. And that means, not coming off, a lot of times by the time we're in the middle of dealing with a chronic illness or a terminal illness, medications, treatments, the stress, you're not at your highest and best. And sometimes that's our window of opportunity. That's our option to do the planning. But if you're listening, and most folks are never gonna be any higher and more best than they are right now.
No, that's in many cases it's just going to go downhill, and it can change on such a sudden moment. Yeah. So, all right. So I'll tell you what. Let's take one more break, and we'll come back. We'll see if we can point out one or two other little spots if we have time. So stick around. We'll be right back. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've told that story. Although that's the first time anybody listening to me tell that story has pointed out that. Now I have pointed out several times that while that may not have been his intention, that because of the way and the circumstances and everything, I've pointed out that, like in my practice, I've had people who did these sort of late in the game plans or were manipulated and stuff, and in the end, because of legal intervention and things like that, the end result was able to come out okay. And kind of like in this story, it only took a couple of wars in a generation or two. But and I guess that's kind of the whole point is, you can fix some of these problems later. But man, is it so much better if you can prevent them from happening on the front end.
Well, I just think of I can maybe a couple times I've had grandchildren go to a grandparent who is a bit frail and anxious, and I've had grandchildren manipulate those grandparents into oh, I'm going to school, I need money for tuition, or, some such. And, the grandparent doesn't know to ask the right questions, or to check it out independently enough for themselves. They just, the granddaughter says that tuition's this much, she writes a check and it's done. We find out that there never was a schooling going on.
The interesting question, though, and one that nobody has ever asked me is well, if Isaac had come to you to plan in advance, how would you have set it up? I mean, especially considering that at the time, the blessing was essentially a verbal, as opposed to a written document.
Well, I would guess that under Jewish tradition, under the oral tradition, you could do things with witnesses.
Probably.
You had the two witnesses or three witnesses. I bet we could find that somewhere in Leviticus or Deuteronomy.
Yeah, that's probably right. So yeah, you might have some witnesses to the oral statement. Would probably be one way to do it. I've never really thought about that part of it. Of actually, how would I, given the circumstances there. All right, it looks like we got about 20 more seconds before we get back here on the radio.
Oh, look at there. Very nice.
It is very nice.
My eyesight's not as good.
Question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to our final segment on today's Aging Insight of Easter weekend here on 2017. And John and I were inspired to talk about some biblical incidents where we see that there's an intersection of estate planning and elder law. And so we've talked about how, Isaac and Jacob and Esau and the blessing and the inheritance that went through that. But, John, I think even more importantly, to show that these issues and these family conflicts and the issues about material things have been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And even Jesus, during his ministry, somebody took a moment of Jesus's time.
That's right.
To ask him to settle an elder law and inheritance dispute.
Yeah, somebody call out from the crowd and they say, Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance. Tell him to give me my 1/2 of the inheritance.
That's right. So
and I've had people come into my office and say, John, lawyer, tell my brother to give me my 1/2 of the inheritance.
Yeah. So it's hard to imagine that based on my faith that someone would take the time to aggravate Jesus with make my brother share my inheritance. But and it's written down and we have it. So it was obviously important enough to include. Yeah. And you can find this particular story in Luke chapter 12, verse 13, and around that area, and you will see this story. And John, as you recall, how did Jesus respond to this person in the crowd?
Yeah, and basically, Jesus comes back and he's like, look, stop worrying about your inheritance. That's not what's important. The possessions, the things, the stuff, it doesn't really matter. And what matters is the harmony. It's that family harmony there. That seems to be the real point there. But yeah, Jesus is like, don't worry about the stuff. It's stuff. It's just stuff.
And of course, there's other places in the New Testament where you hear all about, wherever your treasure is, there is your heart also. And so, you had this person in the crowd shouting out, tell my brother to share half my inheritance with me. Can you imagine, John? And I know we can because we see it. Can you imagine the focus that this family member who had felt wronged by his brother in the sharing of this inheritance, how much focus of their life was on that, how they've been cheated?
Oh, and again, this is I've had people who will bring up family disputes that happened years and years and years ago, and yeah, so that's probably this person in this crowd is this has occupied their whole mind, their whole life, their whole existence, and all over some stuff.
Right. They didn't take that moment to ask Jesus, what can I do to become a holier person? What can I do to find favor in God's eyes? Nope. I want my brother to share his stuff with me, and he won't do it.
Yeah, and Jesus shoots him down right off the bat. He's like, look, that's not important. I'm not going to tell him to share the inheritance because that's not important. That part does not matter. What matters is the intangible.
That's right, the intangibles. So we kind of use this sometimes as we have people coming in, seniors coming in to plan their estates, which step one is a great step, but they sometimes they have ideas that we know based on our experience are going to just be like sticking a stick of dynamite in the middle of their family and lighting the fuse. And of course, John, under law, anyone can do with their stuff anything that they want to do.
Yeah, you can leave it to whoever you want and in whatever way, shape, or form you want.
That's right. But sometimes people don't think about the trail of destruction in their family they're leaving behind. For instance, I've had folks who, maybe they've helped out one child during their lifetime much more than their other children. And so I've had clients who've wanted to say, well, I keep a ledger book in my nightstand, and when I die, I want my executor, who's this one child, to subtract whatever's written down in my ledger book from his sister's inheritance, because she got so much in advance.
Right.
And that's just a recipe for disaster. It really is.
It certainly can be. Looks like we got another caller here. Caller, you're on Aging Insight. What can we do for you?
Oh. Right.
Yeah, no, well, I think when Jesus was telling us, I know we want harmony. I don't think he was including the Romans in the harmony part there. Yeah, no, I think he might have said, hey, give that.
Get rid of Caesar's. What is Caesar's?
Is Caesar's, but nothing more. And yeah, you're not going to make the government happy in any stretch. That's certainly right.
Yeah.
And trying to will not do you any good either.
Well, John, it kind of makes me think about it is tax weekend. It's Easter weekend. It's also right before tax week, tax deadline day. So I think that the caller brings up a good point, though, is, you can certainly plan for your family in such a way. And I think we're really biblically in a lot of ways directed to do that, to where we're not increasing strife and greed and covetousness through our planning. But I think it's certainly just fine to plan the most optimum way, of course, completely legally, of course,
sure,
to minimize any
to minimize some discord,
and minimize anything that is going to the government.
And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we're not giving to Caesar any more than Caesar deserves.
Well, or demands under a penalty of jail.
That's right. But there's one last. We got just a minute or two here, and we've got one more thing that I kind of wanted to mention here. Just because it is Easter weekend, Jesus himself did not have an estate like we would think of.
Yeah, no, his meager possessions, his clothing, his robe. You know, you got Roman soldiers throwing dice and dividing those up.
Yeah,
or something.
And so you would, you look at it and you say, well, okay, he had essentially the clothes on his back, and even those were basically taken by the Roman soldiers and divided out. So what, did Jesus have an inheritance?
Did he make an estate plan?
Yeah, did he make an estate plan? And yeah, he did leave something of value behind, and that was Mary, his mom. He had mom that he was leaving behind, and before he dies, he sets out a plan. Hey, I need her to be taken care of.
Yeah, my most precious possession on this earth. Because of course, back in the day, women, he, as the oldest son, he's in charge of the care of his mother. Joseph apparently has died at this point, so he's the oldest son. The care of his mother falls to him, and he's not going to be able to carry that out because he's being crucified. So from his punishment, from the cross, he sees John and Mary standing there below.
Yep.
And he calls out to John, take care of my mother. Here is my mother. I commend her to your possession and care.
That's right.
And that, that was a plan that he made for his obligation.
Yeah. And John took her into the home and cared for her. And, so when you're out there, that to me is one of the big things out here. We so often deal with people who are caregivers in some capacity. They may be caregivers for their parents. They may be caregivers for an incapacitated spouse. They may be caregivers for an adult disabled child. But they may be caregivers for minor children or grandchildren. But so many are in a position of caregiving. And even the ones that are not, you don't know what the circumstances of the people you leave behind are going to be. And so I think one of the best lessons in all of this is to plan for the care and the protection and the preservation of the dignity and the resources available to the people you leave behind. It's not about, here's my stuff. That I love you will of when one spouse dies, I leave everything to the other. That is not providing a scheme of protection and care for your spouse.
Right.
All that's doing is leaving them the stuff.
Right. So you got to take a bigger picture, a bigger plan than just who gets your stuff, and plan for that family, for their harmony, for their care, for their protection. It's just the right thing for you to do, and I think we're pretty much mandated to do that. Absolutely.
So I hope everybody out there has a great Easter weekend. Thanks to the people who have commented on Facebook and shared our broadcast today. Thanks to all of our sponsors who make the program happen. And thanks to our regular listeners out there. You know who you are.
That's right.
That's right. We'll see you next weekend. We'll see y'all later too.